Hello and welcome back to my small little library. Today we're going to talk about a series that I'm currently reading, and I finished the first 6 books and the 11th book in the series, and I kind of wanted to do like a quick review in between, to kind of like finish up all of those books and then let me continue and make a later review for the rest of the books in the series that I have. We are joined by my puppy today because he wants to stay with me. So if you can hear him in the background, you know who it is, It's, yeah. So, I finished the first 6 books in Kathy Reichs' Temperance Brennan series. And I also read the 11th. I didn't read them in order originally, and then I think like 2 weeks ago I bought the first, I think 16 out of the first 18 or 19 books in the series, so now I can read them in order, and I'm only missing 1 book actually, and that is the 7th book in the series. It's the only one I'm missing so far to read them in order, so I will probably get that as an ebook or lend it from a library. And yeah, the rest of them I actually own, and I am a big fan of the series. If you don't know, the author of the series, Kathy Reichs, actually does the same job as Temperance Brennan in the series. So she is a medical anthropologist for somewhere in the USA and Quebec. And that is actually the same job that Temperance Brennan has in this novels. So she actually inspects bones or deceased people that are deceased through violent crime a lot of the time, and she looks at them and finds out who were they and what happened to them, pretty much. And she obviously works together with like the police and all of these different detectives from different places. So she works in the USA and then in Canada, but in Quebec. But she actually also goes to different countries and helps out there because she obviously has a really respectable skill set, and that is used by many different people, and she often gets lent to other places, which makes the cases really, really interesting. I personally feel like you can read these books in any order you want. The only thing that is pretty much maybe a problem is that you obviously won't get to know like the more private life parts of the books, but I don't feel that they are that much of a focus of the books that it's a problem. If you want to know all of them in order, obviously read them in order, but I don't think it's a problem if you don't read them in order, and I feel like you can pick up any of these books, read it as a standalone, and be totally happy with that, which is what I did in the beginning. I just read all of those I could get my hands on because I bought a lot of them secondhand or got them gifted. And let's be honest, if people gift you books, sometimes they don't realize if it's not the first in a series, and so they gift you books, maybe that are the 5th part in a series, and they don't know. And I don't mind, it's fine, and in these books it's actually really, really fine. I don't think it matters at all. But now that I have them, I obviously want to experience them in the right order to kind of like be able to give you an opinion on how important that is, So I read Deja Dead, which is the first one. Then we have Death de Jure. Sorry for pronunciation, I am really, really bad with French. I learned it in university, I wasn't good at it. So Death de Jure. Then we have Deadly Decisions, which is part 3. Fatal Voyage, which is part 4. Grave Secrets, which is part 5, and Bare Bones, which is part 6, and then the part 11, which is Devil Bones. And those are the ones I finished. I have read 4 in German. I don't know which of the English ones they are. I know that, I think, let me see, Fatal Voyage, I'm pretty sure I've read in German as well. But the problem with German book copies is they often change the title. They don't do like a direct translation. They give them different titles, and it's so irritating because you obviously won't know which is which unless you look it up, But I won't do that because obviously I'm reading them in English now, and I feel like they're a little bit better in their original language. So let's talk about what happens in these books. I feel like they're really interesting because obviously the author knows the topic of the books really, really well. You get a lot of science in here. So if you're not one who likes a lot of like background information into how the science works, the series probably isn't for you. I feel like Kathy Reichs really manages to put in information that you maybe don't know, like to explain, for example, how CT scans can help identify victims, or how tooth identification works, finding out like what was done on the tooth and then comparing them to records that they have, or working with like when somebody had a broken bone, finding that out with the hospital, all of those things which you maybe don't know a lot about because it's not your job to know a lot about, she explains in these books. And these explanations always happen in like some kind of like context of like explaining it to somebody who doesn't know it in the book, or and a colleague of hers being like, oh, could you explain this to me? So they work really, really well, the explanations, in my opinion. And so you get those for like the more scientific stuff, but you also get it for the historic stuff, because a lot of these stories also have like a historical aspect, because that is what she does. She often works with older bones, and a lot of these cases have like maybe like one older case and then newer cases in them, which is really, really interesting, I feel like. And so you often also get like a history lesson included in the book, which was really interesting in my opinion. So I really like that. If you like more explanation rather than only thrilling content, I feel like the series is really, really great for that. If you only want action, then these aren't it, because there are obviously a lot of scenes where she's looking at bones, doing explanations, going from one office to the other to like get information together, to talk to different specialists, stuff like that. So yeah, I feel like these books are like a really nice balance between action and scientific information in the books, And then let's come to the character of Temperance Brennan. If you maybe watched the show, there's a show out there called Bones, and that show is inspired by the books. I say inspired because I personally feel like they did the character a little bit dirty in the series. I don't know if it's true, but I read an article that the Temperance Brennan of the Bones series is actually modeled after an autistic person, which I feel like could actually be really true. I feel like if you watched that series, that kind of would make sense. The Temperance Brennan in the book is really different, so I don't know why exactly they did that, because obviously it's inspired by the book series, but the character in the TV show has a really different backstory. They over-dramatized the backstory and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. I personally am not the biggest fan of the Temperance Brennan in the series, but the book Temperance Brennan I really like. She's a really headstrong character, so oftentimes she gets herself into danger that she maybe didn't need to be in, but she doesn't like to sit down and wait. If she feels like she has like a hint that she could go after, even though it maybe isn't like her job to do that, but she can't maybe get the detectives because they do different things. She's like, okay, I'm doing this on my own. I'm going in, I'm going to find out what happened here. And I love her for that. It makes for obviously dangerous situations, but I feel like they bring like the action and the danger to the box, but they also give you really interesting situations where maybe the perpetrator like doesn't really know why it isn't a cop that has come, but it's an anthropologist who has come. So yeah, there is a lot of like interesting stuff happening because of her being headstrong. She's also a recovering alcoholic in the books, so she doesn't really go to AA meetings regularly, but she used to go now and then, and she's dry. She is divorced at the beginning of the story, and so obviously there are, relationship stuff. I won't spoil you anything if you don't know it, but there's relationship stuff in there, which I'm not the biggest fan of if you watch any of my other videos. I don't like romance in books, but I feel like it's on the side enough that it works, that it's just kind of like a part of the story, but it's not a main part of the story. It's not the important part of the story, if you get me, So I feel like that works. She has a daughter and a cat and an ex-husband, obviously. They play a role here and then, but it's like a really workable private life that doesn't, like, it's there because obviously it's a character, you know, a character has to have private life, but it isn't like overwhelmingly so that the focus shifts from the cases to her private life. The cases are the focus of the books, which I personally love. And I hate when I get like a thriller and then the personal life of the main characters is just the focus of everything instead of the cases that the character has to deal with. So yeah, I really like the main character. I feel like she's just a really interesting person. I would, you know, if it wouldn't have been a book character, I would have really liked a talk with her, because I did take an anthropology course in college. I did one, you know, where you have to learn all about bones and where they go, how many there are, you know, like a bone course in college. I really loved it. I obviously I didn't graduate from college. I dropped out of college, but I did really enjoy that course. So that is really interesting. I mean, these books, I think I read the ones I have in German. I read when I was a teenager, and as a teenager I did like the show Bones. As an adult, I can't really watch it anymore. I don't know why, but I did. As a teenager, I loved it, and for a time I really wanted to be an anthropologist, a forensic anthropologist, just like she is, but I didn't do it. I don't know if I could deal with the gore that comes with the job. And if you read these books, you know what gore comes with the job. The books don't sugarcoat things. They tell them how they are. So if you have a light stomach and can't deal with that, even if you read a book and not see it, you know, then maybe these books aren't for you. Because they are graphic. They aren't like sugarcoating anything, really. They are really graphic, and I think that makes these stories a lot more like realistic, you know. But all in all, I just think because of the author having the same job as the main character, and obviously the job as the main topic of the books, it just works so well. I feel like you're in there because the stories are so realistic, and they, you know, it's not these books where, like, if you look up the facts of the science, it's just mumbo jumbo that isn't really true, but here all of it is true and really interesting. Also, I think she worked together with some cops and detectives, so that part of the story also works out really well. We have a few different detectives that come up again and again, which she works with, and some of them are like real characters, and I think it's nice to have like different characters she interacts with that bring out different sides in her, because she isn't the most patient person, Temperance Brennan, and different detectives really, you know, get to her, and then the story just goes off in other directions because she's so annoyed at them. It's a lot of fun. A quick overview what the different books are about case-wise. So the first one, Temperance has to investigate the finding of a young woman who was killed and dismembered, and she starts with one and then there are coming more, and she has to find out who the perpetrator is. Really interesting. I really like that case. Then there's the second one. She is exhuming a nun who is proposed for sainthood, and so her bones has to get out of her grave and you know, brought to the church. And then an hour later she gets called out again because there was an arson case from a family, and the cases kind of connect at some point, and so yeah, she has to kind of find out what the heck is happening here, and there might be a cult involved. Then the third one, Deadly Decision, is one I personally didn't love as much because this is a biker case. So there's a war between two biker factions, and yeah, people are caught in between, innocent people, children, and bikers. All of them, and she has to investigate and find out how could this happen actually. I personally not a fan of like biker gangs, stuff like that. I find it to be personally really boring, and because of how she does her books, there's a lot of like lore about bikers and how the biker societies work and stuff. I found that to be boring, but if you like bikers, that case would be for you actually. Then this one, which is one of my favorite cases, it's a crashed plane. There were some, like a school basketball team, baseball, basketball, a sports team from school is on that plane, and actually one cop colleague who was transporting a prisoner. The case really goes off the rails. It's one of the more like really full of twists and turns books by her, but I really love it. I like kind of the setting of this like mass casualty and how that all works. I found that to be really interesting, so yeah, this is why I found that one really interesting. Then we have Bare Bones, which the cases start with a child that's killed and the mother having disappeared, and then we have a pilot who drives into a rock face, or flies into rock face, and when she kind of discovers them, the bones are like covered in a strange substance, and then there are edible bones kind of like just coming up everywhere, and yeah, she has to find out what connects all of those cases. And then we have Grave Secrets, which this is one I also found to be really, really interesting because this plays in Guatemala City, and she is actually there for like people who were killed in a massacre that the government did, and she's there to give peace to the families so they can actually bury their loved ones. And while she's there, 4 girls go missing, and she gets brought into the case, and somebody is against her helping. And so she kind of goes between Montreal and Guatemala City in that case. And then we have Devil Bones, which, because of the title, you probably already know, but there's a house that gets renovated, and through the renovation they find a secret cellar, and there are animal bones and human bones and cauldrons and, you know, all of the typical occult stuff that gets depicted at like satanic and stuff like that. You know, it's a little bit of a cliche kind of a case, and she has to find out what actually happened in that house. So those are the cases that I've read already, and I am flying through the rest. I am loving the series. If you love thrillers who are based on like actual science and realistic cases, then I feel like the Temperance Brennan series might actually be for you. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave me your opinions about the Temperance Brennan series, or maybe also the TV series down below, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Bye!